Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello and welcome, my friends. I'm happy to be here with you as usual today, and I just want to remind you to go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't yet done that. If you're finding these podcast episodes helpful in any way, if you subscribe, you'll make sure to ensure you won't miss any. And it means a lot to me to have you here and to be part of this highly sensitive community. So oftentimes this time of year is a time to think about what we want to bring in, what we're ready to be done with, and what we want to bring into this next year. Really to I think the beauty of this time of year collectively is we are all kind of thinking of it as a fresh start. And although every day can be a fresh start, this time of year can be especially, can be a big reset for so many of us. So today, to sort of assist with that, to help you with that, I want to talk about one of the big things that really kills our capacity to create the changes that we want in our marriages and our lives, so that you can be aware of it and really catch it in yourself and ultimately get that kind of barrier, this kind of barrier that I'm going to talk about, out of your own way, and really get resourced and refueled. I think about the metaphor of a car, right? That goes to get, fully serviced. That's right. and fueled up, right? So that you can begin this new year actually making the changes that you really want, that will feel so good to you, right? And specifically, of course, in the realm of your marriage and love life. So that's what this episode will be about today. And it might surprise you where we're going to head. But, one of the reasons I want to talk about this is because one of the things that I hear from clients who are just starting with me, or from people in my community, I used to have a Facebook group. It's no longer, but I would hear this a lot in the Facebook group is these words. Why do I have to be the one to do the work on my marriage? Right? And I wouldn't be surprised if many of you listening have that question too. So I totally get it. We don't enter into a relationship wanting to feel alone in it, right? Or we're the only ones putting effort into it, right? That's not how we think a relationship should be, right? So, and I have been there. I've been in that position thinking, why do I have to be the one to work on it? Why do I have to put all this energy into it? And I personally have worked with that feeling and those kinds of thoughts a lot. And one of the biggest things I know is that kind of thinking does not serve me, and it does not serve you. Because when we're thinking that way, why do I have to? Tell me where I'm wrong, but when you think that way, you probably feel burdened and resentful. And those feelings, burden and resentment, are not going to motivate you to do the work. It's not going to fuel you up or get you excited to make the changes that you want in your marriage, right? When we feel burdened and resentment, we feel kind of heavy. We don't feel full of energy, that's for sure. Maybe we feel angry, but it tends to not fuel us to create change. It tends to freeze us up and keep us from making the changes that we want. Because, when we're feeling that way, ultimately it's kind of like we resign ourselves, or we might end up. So this is the thing that I really want to caution you against, is that when you're thinking, why do I have to? And you're feeling those feelings that come along with that, you might just like kind of resign yourself to your marriage just being how it is now, right? Or maybe feeling even worse than it does now, because marriages kind of are not totally immune to the law of entropy, where things just kind of unravel without attention, right? Without upkeep. They too tend to disintegrate and get harder and feel worse. So when we're resigning ourselves to just tolerating okayness or dullness or low-grade suffering or, lots of pain and upset in our marriages, we slowly wither and die inside. Right? That is not what we are alive for. That is not what we are here for. So when I hear those words, like, why do I have to be the one to do the work? I always answer, there is no have to involved. Because the truth is, you really don't have to. You don't have to put any effort or work into your relationship, right? There's nobody holding a gun to your head. There's nobody forcing you to. It's always 100% optional that you do put work into your marriage, right? I think that when we have this line of thinking, why do I have to? And we feel that burden and that resentment that comes from it, it's because we're forgetting something important. It's just because we're forgetting. We're forgetting that we don't have to. We're forgetting that we actually want to, because we want the result. We don't want to have our soul wither and die, right? We want to feel nourished by our marriage. We want to have that loving relationship that we've always dreamed of, right? We want to have that experience of deep love that we're actually here for, we're cut out for, right? When we're feeling that resistance to doing the work and why should we have to, right? We're forgetting why we would want to do that work. The sad but true fact of life, and which as a young child, I would have fought this fact very fiercely, but is that life is not always fair. Right? I know this was true for me. I think many of us feel like we're entitled to having great love, right? Like that we're entitled to just have it given to us. I do believe that, like I've said, we are here to experience deep love. We are here to love our marriages and love our lives. But it isn't something that we just get handed. I wish it was, but it isn't something that just gets delivered to us, especially in this modern, complex, complicated world that we live in. We have been born into a world, into a culture that doesn't just hand that to us, right? We're actually having that, that deep love that we really want, that actually can be way more the exception than the rule. Because most of us haven't been taught how. And that's all that's missing. We haven't learned how to create that love, to have that love, right? I think so many of us feel like we're like little plants deprived of sunlight and water, right? We kind of haven't been planted in a soil and given the light and the water that we need to grow and thrive, these little plants that we are, right? But that's something that we can learn, we can create for ourselves. So like I've said over and over, if having that kind of deeply loving, nourishing marriage is something that you truly want, truly care about, you can have it. You can. but it doesn't just come handed to you, right? It is your responsibility. It is your choice. And it is your truly wonderful privilege to create that. That's how I see it. And it will mean growing and working at it. And side note, the work does not always have to feel hard or burdensome. I want you to know that, because I work on my marriage and I love working on my marriage, and I'll get into that. It truly can be fun. It truly can be joyous, and even the most rewarding thing that you've ever done. I hear that regularly from clients. I mean, I've heard it from so many people, so many women, and I've done it myself, and I've witnessed and felt the profound joy and pride, and ultimately the thrill of being the one to shift and change my marriage into something that I deeply cherish and feel so proud of. So you can have that, but the first stumbling block to having that is often this thought: why do I have to? Right? Because it leads to this resentment. It leads to that sense of burden and really keeps you from making those changes and growing. So like these thoughts and these feelings, they really come from that lizard part of you, right? We talked about that in episode 6, the primal part of you that ultimately kind of tends to work against you when it comes to having the love that you want. Like that primal part is there to protect you, but it often does that by keeping you from a lot of the things that you want. So if you want to go back and listen to episode 6, if you haven't yet, totally recommend that. It's really an important foundation for understanding this. But you can totally keep listening today to get a lot out of this podcast without having heard that one. When you get yourself free of the tenacious grip of those feelings and those thoughts of like, why do I have to? You actually are freeing yourself up to create that profound joy that comes from you being the catalyst of making your marriage amazing. So, if you do find yourself feeling resentful, if you do feel yourself find yourself feeling burdened or not motivated, or if you're thinking, why should I have to be the one, or some version of that thought, and if you find that you're not taking a lot of action and you're just wishing your partner would do this or that or change, if you're not applying some of the things that I've shared in this podcast, or other things that you've learned that can support and help your relationship, or that you could do to help your relationship, I want you to know this is not something to beat yourself up about if that's going on for you. It really just means you're having thoughts, your primal brain is rearing its head, and it's kind of getting the best of you. And that is totally normal, right? And it really just means that that's happening, and it's making you forget something so important, right? And so the remedy here is to get more conscious. And what I mean by that is to slip into the wiser part of you, the more conscious part of you, and remember, reconnect with your big why. Your big why. So here is how. Instead of, or whenever you find yourself asking yourself the question, why do I have to be the one to do the work? Or feeling that burden that you feel, the resistance to doing it, I want you to ask yourself a much better question. And actually, I want you to do that now, today. You can ask it again when that thought comes up in your mind someday, tomorrow, or the next day, the future. But right now, I invite you to ask yourself this question. What is my big why? What is my big reason for doing this work? Another version of a couple of other versions of this question is, why would I want to do this work? Why would I want to put my heart and soul and my energy and my time into doing this work on my marriage? Why is this important for me to do? It's so easy for us to forget to ask this question, or not know to ask this question, or not to ever think deeply about this, right? So easy. I know I did not think about this for many years. Never did I pause to think deeply about this. So now I do, right? Because when we pause and really look at our true reasons for putting our effort into, like doing all we can from our side, so much emotional fuel is freed up, right? We feel so differently. We approach it so differently. And when we're approaching it from enthusiasm or, like good feelings, right? Then we actually do have so much power to make a difference. All right. So I want to share my personal whys with you. Some of my big reasons for being so invested in growing in my marriage and doing all the work that I can on me in my marriage, and putting my best into my marriage is because I'm going to just list a few reasons here. I want to be the best version of myself, right? When I'm not being her, when I'm not working towards becoming the best version of myself, I'm not as satisfied with my life. I don't feel in integrity, and that matters to me. So putting work into my marriage is for me to feel good about me, right? I actually believe that the purpose of a romantic relationship isn't just to feel great and comfortable all the time. A great marriage is for healing the parts of us that need healing. And that might mean rubbing up against the hard stuff in me, right? Looking at the ways in which I get in my own way, right? And growing into who I really want to be, like healing those parts of me. Looking at my obstacles, right? Moving through those and healing those wounds and changing those protective patterns that keep me like constricted and small and hard and not being who I want to be, so that I can be ultimately the woman I know I can be, and actually who I even am deep down, right? When we clear all the stuff on top. So I'm in it for that. I'm not just in it for the comfort and the joy. I'm in it for the even more deep joy of becoming my best self and showing up as her in my life. Okay. So that's a big one for me. Another big why for me is because being my most loving self, feeling deep love for my husband feels good to me. Feeling love is amazing. And I will go to great lengths to feel that in myself. I will do all I can to stay connected to that or reconnect to that feeling of love in me. And it's, a marriage is the perfect place for that, for finding my way over and over back to love. Another big why is that as I grow myself, as I work on myself, it teaches my husband. It influences my husband. And I've talked about this before on the podcast, right? This is true. So many people see this, is that when we work on ourselves, we actually impact the marriage as a whole. We influence our partner and ultimately allow the best of him to come out, so that it does improve the marriage as a whole as I work on myself. Yeah. And sort of as an extension of that, the work that I do on me in my marriage ripples out, right? It models healthy relating to my children. What more precious is that, to being able to teach our children how to be in a mature, healthy, deeply respectful, deeply connected relationship, right? They get to take that with them for the rest of their lives, and they get to pass that down through their children and their grandchildren, right? It's a legacy we leave them, right? When I work on my marriage too, this might sound surprising. What I have found is that it impacts my own parents, my mother and my father, my friends too. my dad. I was just telling my dad about something going on in my life. Actually, we're having Thanksgiving. I'm recording this Thanksgiving week. So tomorrow we're having Thanksgiving with my ex-husband. And because I've worked on that relationship too, because we left that in such a loving place when we were divorced. And my relationship with my husband now is so good that we can all come together at Thanksgiving and celebrate together. And my kids get to witness that, and my parents get to witness that, and they get to feel inspired. Their experience of divorce and marriages was totally different. And so they are being modeled through me, something beautiful. And it's just opening up their world too, which feels amazing, I have to tell you. So I am being, as I work in my marriage, I'm being an example of what's possible. And it just ripples out. And modeling it is the best form of teaching, and it ripples out to you, right? And I love that. I am being, and you can be too in your marriage, a force of change, not just in your marriage, but in the world, right? Because ultimately, the world can heal, right? We can heal the world, like one relationship at a time, right? So that we can live in a world where love and respect for all life is actually at the center of our lives. Like, that's what working on my marriage ultimately means to me, is I'm creating a better world for myself, for my children, for all of you, right? We can only start right here in what we can control, which is us, right? I want to have a world that we can live in and love living in for generations to come. Right? That is my sacred mission, and it is my deep privilege to do that. And it starts right here by working on me in my marriage. And when I connect to that, I am so energized. As you can probably tell from my voice, I become deeply passionate and in love with doing the sometimes uncomfortable work of growing in my marriage. The sometimes uncomfortable work, but often deeply joyful work of growing in my marriage, of growing inside of myself. So I want that for you too. I want it to feel amazing to work on your marriage. I want you to feel deeply proud and good, right? So I want you to ask yourself those questions. What is your big why? Right? And I have some other questions too that might help you connect even more with your why. So here they are for you. I want you to ask yourself, what would your life be like if you were the reason that your marriage became so great? How would you feel about yourself then? What would be possible for you from there? What would be possible in your life once you've been the reason your marriage became so wonderful, just what you want it to be? Really think about that. And maybe when you're hearing those questions, already some little answers are popping up. But if not yet, I invite you to really sit with the questions, answer them, right? And even pause this podcast if you're not driving, right? Or set it aside sometime later. Don't just hear them and be like, oh yeah, right? Really pause, answer the questions, and notice how it feels once you've answered the questions. Right? You heard my voice as I was sharing my why with you. I felt so passionate and excited, and I still do right now. And notice that when you're thinking like that, when you're seeing all the reasons for why you want to do the work on your marriage, notice if you feel more excited, perhaps even compelled, motivated, inspired to start making those changes now. Maybe you even feel lucky and privileged that you get to do this, that you're in a position where you can do this. Just notice. Because connecting to those reasons and connecting to the feelings that those reasons bring us, connecting to that vision we have for our lives, that is the fuel that we need, that we can use to propel us into actually making that vision possible, right? So different than coming from this feeling of like burden and resentment to come from, passion and inspiration and motivation. Yeah? That is the emotional fuel you want. Right? And we can't have that fuel when we're focused on why someone else isn't doing something we want them to do. Maybe you'll notice this now. When you're focused on why your partner, why your husband isn't doing the work that you are, isn't putting in as much as you are, that will zap you of your energy. That will deplete you. That will make the relationship feel that much harder, right? That does the exact opposite of what you want. And if it sounds like I'm speaking from experience, I am, for sure, right? So start with your why. Start with remembering why you want this, why it matters to you. Start with looking at what you want and what that would mean for you in your whole life. You are the only one that can create that. Your partner can't do that for you. He can contribute, for sure. But it starts with you because you want it, right? And when you want it and you're coming from this place of like being fueled up, you can make that happen so much more easily. And it can feel profoundly joyful. So start with that why. And if you find yourself ready and excited to do this work and make your marriage what you want it to be, and you also know it would be better, easier, and more fun with someone who knows how to navigate all the bumps that come along the way and knows how to get you there to that marriage you want, come be my next client, and together we'll make your marriage no longer burdensome, but something you feel so deeply good about. A client emailed me the other day just to say, I'm feeling super amazed at the changes happening with your support. How we show up in the relationship has the power to alter how our partner responds. It's so simple to say, but when one finally experiences this and embodies this, it's amazing. I love getting emails like that. Another client said, I can't get over how beautiful our relationship is now after working with you. It's almost surreal. It's like we're almost different people now. Neither of us imagined we'd ever be in this place. Our relationship is so strong and so deep now. We've come to a place where we truly get each other. We even lovingly deal with conflict. It's incredible. I'm feeling so good about myself. So that is what happens. And that's possible for you. That's what we'll have you saying when you come coach with me. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out, set up a consult with me. You can just email me at hannah@lifeisworthloving.com. All right. Be oh so well.